Keir Starmer walked in thinking this would be a calm, polite exchange, the kind where everyone nods and pretends to agree. Instead, Jordan Peterson crashed the moment with sharp logic, non-stop energy, and words cutting straight through every weak explanation in front of him. Starmer looked completely thrown off, like a frozen voice assistant trying to explain socialism without a manual, blinking through answers that just wouldn't land. What unfolded wasn't really a debate.
Of Keir Starmer's attacks on freedom of speech.
It's exactly what you'd expect from someone who holds his position. It's nothing new. I think in the UK, things have gone farther in the UK on the, what would you say, with regards to threats to freedom of expression than maybe anywhere in the West, although Canada's doing its best to play catch-up, maybe New Zealand. It's in keeping with his ethos. It's not surprising and it's appalling.
It was chaos with a microphone, half lecture, half verbal showdown, with tension rising fast. And somehow, Peterson wasn't even physically there, yet his ideas hit harder than anything Starmer could put together. It felt less like a discussion and more like someone flipping the table on a carefully rehearsed performance, somewhere near Downing Street.
About the state of morality in Britain, that grooming gangs were taking place for more than 3 decades.
You know, that's what happens when a naive, demented, and self-righteous multiculturalism takes the upper hand, and when the upper class is willing to sacrifice the poor to their own moral presumptions. Yeah, it's appalling in every possible way. So, and it indicates, it's indicative of something truly hideous beneath the surface, not only on the rape gang side, but obviously on the side of the authorities that conspired to keep it a secret. Dreadful.
A man named Keir Starmer is still trying to lead a nation with the energy of outdated office tech and the excitement of room temperature tea. Meanwhile, Peterson's arguments ripped through the image of steady leadership, exposing hesitation, confusion, and a serious lack of direction. Now imagine Britain as a ship drifting aimlessly through rough waters.
Does it surprise you that Keir Starmer doesn't want a national inquiry into grooming gangs?
No, that doesn't surprise me. It's exactly what you'd expect. I've got an article coming out in the Telegraph this week about exactly that issue, and so it's appalling. Well, there's hard questions that need to be asked about and answered about multiculturalism, and no one's willing to have the discussion, but it needs to be had, obviously. And I think there's maybe a way forward with regards to the signatories of the Abraham Accord, to have a serious discussion about how Islamic fundamentalism might be brought under control and some vision of how...
The crew is nervous, signals are mixed, and the compass won't settle. At the wheel stands Captain Starmer, flipping through a guide called Generic Leadership for Dummies, while voices from the shores of reason shout one simple question. Has anyone even checked the map? Starr's identity crisis isn't some short phase, it's a full-time routine he's been running for years. One day he's dressed up as the people's progressive hero, flashing shiny promises, and the next day he's quietly buffing up his centrist image like an old briefcase pulled out for corporate meetings. The constant switching feels less like leadership and more like political choreography, all movement, no direction. And no, that's not flexibility, that's straight ideological whiplash. Any serious thinker who talks about rules, responsibility, and real accountability would look at Starr's non-stop position shifting and shake their head.
What's your prediction for the UK election? You've been quite scathing about Sir Keir Starmer, but the polls show at the moment, certainly, if the election happens in the autumn, it seems likely, that he is heading to some kind of victory. But what do you think that would mean for Britain? And do the Conservatives have any chance of stopping that?
I think it'll be catastrophic. I believe that Labour, like the socialist parties in Canada, is absolutely overwhelmed by the diversity, equity, and inclusivity, victimizer narrative types.
If clarity had value, Starr would be flat broke. His policies act like Schrodinger's cat, somehow real and not real at the same time, changing shape depending on who's standing in front of him. Say one thing here, hint at the opposite there, and hope nobody compares notes. Look at the economy for proof. Starr rolls out a budget that feels less like a plan and more like a corporate spreadsheet that woke up one morning and decided to run the country. It promises growth without showing the engine, just vibes, soft language, and tax tweaks that quietly squeeze regular workers while giving the wealthy a friendly nod. It's political busywork, dressed up as progress, moving things around while pretending nothing serious is happening. Meanwhile, Peterson's ideas about competence and structured ambition sit in total contrast to Starr's obsession with surface-level calm while running the country. Everything looks clean and managed on the outside, like a spotless dental clinic filled with rehearsed smiles and scripted procedures. But underneath, there's no passion, no backbone, and no clear direction, leaving the economy feeling less like a bold new chapter and more like a dusty museum packed with broken calculators and recycled buzzwords. When it comes to culture, the problem gets even worse. Starmer is so scared of upsetting anyone that he's turned his movement into the political version of flavorless tofu, safe, bland, and afraid to stand for anything. Every position comes with a disclaimer, every statement with an apology, as cultural debates are avoided like they're dangerous territory. The strategy seems simple: say as little as possible and hope boredom does the heavy lifting. While Peterson pushes clarity, conviction, and moral structure, Starmer appears convinced that silence, delivered confidently, will cover the cracks. It's like he believes refusing to engage will hide the fact that his party's sense of direction vanished somewhere long ago, leaving him quietly hoping that avoiding reality will keep the toughest questions at a safe distance.
That even if Starmer himself has any sense, which I doubt, the probability that his minions will lay waste to the UK it's certain in my estimation. There's so much behind the scene tyrannizing going on in the name of hypothetical utopian progress that it's almost unimaginable. I mean, the CCTVs in the ULEZ zones are a great example of that, and everything that's happened in London under Sadiq Khan, who's like poster boy for ideologically addled globalist utopians. And if the Labour gets in, and I can understand why the citizens of the UK are hungry for a change, if Labour gets in, it's like Venezuela, here we come.
It's under that calm, polite exterior sits a heavy control streak that can't be ignored. Starmer once sold himself as the great defender of party democracy, but now runs Labour like a private members club built for cautious managers who hate surprises. MPs are selected with about as much grassroots input as a staged election, and any hint of ideological disagreement gets shut down fast. Step out of line, and you're pushed aside without hesitation. The party's left wing hasn't just been sidelined, it's been quietly erased, like an old political photo edited over and over until only the leader is left smiling at the centre. Debate is treated as a threat, not a strength, and loyalty matters more than ideas. That's not unity, that's control dressed up as order. Compared to Peterson's respect for strong institutions and shared power, Starmer isn't building a movement at all. He's managing a brand. A beige, lifeless corporate brand loaded with loyalty cards, empty slogans, and endless slide decks where leadership means oversight instead of vision. Labour doesn't inspire anymore, it audits. On foreign affairs, he doesn't lead, he follows. Every global summit turns into a performance where he plays statesman while repeating whatever lines arrived in the latest approved memo. Policy is shaped by optics, press releases, and trending tags. Britain isn't being led, it's being managed by a middle manager, convinced competence alone is enough. Something Peterson would see as ambition, with no guiding philosophy. Starmer chases public approval like a golden retriever locked onto a tennis ball, even on issues where clarity should be simple and direct. Housing, education, climate, all of it gets buried under layers of pointless complexity. Housing is trapped in endless planning loops, education gets reduced to empty targets, and climate policy is written so carefully that it barely says anything at all. Every sentence feels designed to avoid friction rather than fix problems. Nothing is built to challenge anyone. Policy is shaped to avoid upsetting powerful interests or everyday comfort zones, not to actually deliver change. It's governance by caution, decisions filtered through fear, and solutions watered down until they're harmless to everyone and helpful to no one.
And Starmer's posturing with regards to adolescence is only going to make that worse. It's bad psychology, and it's not only that, it's also oriented not to help young people, but to make Mr. Starmer feel a hell of a lot more secure in the idiot presumptions of his dimwit progressivism. So, and that's really the fundamental aim. It's like, how can we show we're right? And if we have to burn some young people on the pyre to make sure that our moral presuppositions can remain intact and our faith in our idiocy remains unchallenged, then we might as well teach kids using a Netflix series on adolescence.
At this point, leadership has been turned into a bowl of flavorless porridge, safe, bland, and completely non-committal, with no bite, no edge, and no fire. just bullet points pretending to be beliefs and slogans standing in for courage. Britain doesn't need a manager-in-chief checking boxes. It needs someone with a backbone, a real plan, and at least a visible pulse. Peterson didn't just challenge Starmer with logic, he shattered the illusion that there was anything solid under the polished suit and carefully timed pauses. And the real problem is when this is happening. The country is under pressure everywhere, public services stretched thin, housing spiraling out of control, and a whole generation inheriting stress instead of stability. Yet Starmer delivers statements with the energy of a dial tone and the impact of a damp sponge. Peterson wouldn't even need to raise his voice, because Starmer defeats himself without any help. He comes off like the political version of a ghost-written self-help book, vague, scared of specifics, and clearly not meant to be used in the real world. Everything sounds polished but says nothing, drifting toward irrelevance while collecting dust. Britain deserves more than a political placebo. It needs leadership that sparks action, not one that quietly manages decline. What Peterson breaks down in theory, Britain is living through in real time. Leadership has collapsed into focus group slogans, and conviction has melted into neat administration. Big ideas get trimmed down until they're harmless, and bold choices are replaced with safe process. Starmer is what happens when a country in crisis hires a risk consultant instead of an actual leader. Then suddenly, the Peterson-shaped media storm hits number 10 head-on. No shouting, no wild theatrics, just calm, sharp analysis crashing through the carefully maintained image.
The actual desire to tar anyone who has, as I say, not got a voice and is wanting to make their voice heard as a violent far-right neo-Nazi seems to me to be a big error by Keir Starmer and others. Because, if you can't say, we recognize your deep concerns about some things that have happened, including mass stabbings, terrorism, and much more. We understand your deep concerns, and we are going to try to get onto this and on top of this. But there is no excuse to turn out on the streets and be violent against your Muslim brothers and sisters and neighbors or
Starr's leadership gets dissected piece by piece, like a classroom experiment everyone can see coming. No drama needed. All Peterson really does is hold up a mirror. At the core of his thinking is one simple idea: leaders should take responsibility for what they do. Meanwhile, Starmer treats responsibility like it's something to avoid at all costs, hoping careful wording and silence will make it disappear. Starmer keeps disappearing behind a fog of inquiries, reviews, and endless lessons learned every time something goes wrong. Whether it's NHS disruptions, economic blunders, or political missteps, the response is always the same: delay, deflect, and hope the moment passes. It's like watching a magician panic while trying to escape his own trick, hands waving, eyes darting, no real solution in sight. Peterson's message is simple and brutal: fix your life before you try to run a country. Starr's version feels very different. Treat the nation like a group project, and quietly hope someone else takes the blame when the PowerPoint crashes. Responsibility gets shared until it disappears, and accountability turns into a disappearing act. Then there's vision, the thing leaders are actually supposed to have: a clear plan, a direction, a reason people should follow. Yet Starmer somehow leads a major UK party with the inspirational energy of a printer setup manual, technical, dull, and impossible to get excited about. While Peterson talks about structure, order, and moral clarity, Starmer seems convinced that vague optimism and recycled management buzzwords can pass as political philosophy.
Somehow navigate us to a better place. Possibly, is he going to be a transformative prime minister where we all wake up in 2-3 years and think, wow, the Starmer revolution? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's better. That's better than it might have been. Well, I spent quite a long time working with Democrats in the US, and I got very disillusioned about that, partly because they showed zero propensity to draw a line between the moderate Democrats and the radical.
One man uses dragons as metaphors to explain chaos. The other treats real-world problems like dragons too, avoiding them in sheer panic. Say what you want about Peterson, at least his ideas connect into something solid people can actually understand. At the end of all this noise, one contrast keeps standing out louder than everything else. Peterson represents an uncomfortable challenge, the kind that forces people to confront structure, responsibility, and consequences. Starmer, on the other hand, represents comfort politics, smooth edges, safe tones, and endless moderation that never leads anywhere meaningful. One asks hard questions, the other avoids them like they might cause friction. Leadership isn't supposed to be about calming everyone down until nothing matters. It's supposed to be about choosing a direction and owning the outcome. But under Starmer, leadership feels reduced to careful wording and crisis management, where survival replaces purpose and ambition gets trimmed to fit polling data. The public doesn't hear conviction, they hear hesitation. They don't see momentum, they see maintenance. Britain isn't moving forward. It's being carefully kept in place, preserved like an exhibit rather than pushed toward a future. Peterson's presence didn't create the cracks, it exposed them. The confusion, the caution, the lack of spine, all of it was already there. When ideas collide with emptiness, the emptiness always shows first. And that's the uncomfortable truth many are starting to notice. This isn't a clash of personalities, it's a clash between substance and presentation, between ideas that demand effort and leadership that prefers safety. And once people see that difference clearly, it's very hard to unsee it. Once that contrast clicks, everything else starts to make sense fast. The speeches, the pauses, the endless consultations, all of it stops looking thoughtful and starts looking strategic in the worst way. Not strategic for progress, but strategic for survival. Every decision feels filtered through fear of backlash rather than belief in direction.
I suspect what will happen in the UK is the same thing that happened in Canada, which is that the right will split, reform, and reunite, and that would be the best bet. Maybe as a coalition government, I'm not staking my, what would you say? I'm not, no, not on either candidate. I've spoken with Nigel Farage and with Kemi Badenoch, and they're both credible people, and they have to fight it out amongst themselves. But I imagine the right will unite eventually again and hopefully reform.
Power under Starmer doesn't move with confidence, it hesitates. Authority gets softened, diluted, and wrapped in careful language until it loses meaning. The result is leadership that sounds reasonable but inspires nothing, calm on the surface, empty underneath. Peterson's ideas cut through that fog because they demand something uncomfortable: responsibility. Not shared responsibility, not blurred responsibility, real responsibility with names attached to outcomes. That's the part modern politics hates the most. Instead of confronting that challenge, Starmer's approach leans into management speak, task forces, reviews, frameworks, all designed to delay decisions rather than make them. It's governance by postponement, leadership by memo, and direction by consensus fatigue. The danger isn't chaos, it's stagnation. A country can survive noise and disagreement, but it struggles under endless caution. And as this contrast keeps playing out, more people are starting to see the issue clearly. This isn't about style, tone, or delivery anymore. It's about whether leadership is meant to guide the nation forward or simply keep the lights on and hope nobody notices the silence. Clean your room, clean your country, get your house in order before lecturing the world. Now look at Starr's house. It's not just messy, it's barely standing. Half the policies are boarded up, the roof leaks contradictions, and there's a strange smell of focus group leftovers drifting through the halls. Nothing feels stable, nothing feels solid, and everything looks patched together just enough to survive another news cycle. If Peterson's ideas are built like a cathedral of order, structure, and responsibility, Starr's leadership feels like a flat-pack cabinet assembled in a panic, held together by fear, vague promises, and emergency fixes that wobble the moment pressure hits. It's not leadership, it's damage control pretending to be direction. He's not just weak, he's the anti-leader, the political version of a spreadsheet sent to etiquette school, polished, cautious, and terrified of saying anything real at a press conference. Where's the fire? Where's the conviction? Where's the moment of, this is who I am, take it or leave it? Starr speaks in press releases, campaigns in ambiguity, and governs like someone haunted by the idea of bad reviews. It's moral retreat dressed up as moderation, an unwillingness to take a stand for fear of upsetting media gatekeepers, donors, or loud critics. And that's the full breakdown. If this made you think differently, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to see it, and I'll catch you in the next video.